All right, so I've worked in church IT for a long time. Started out in missions like 15 years ago. I've been working with missions organizations and churches ever since. And during that time, I've seen those organizations, those churches, those and those missions organizations get attacked by everything from state actors of large governments to cyber criminal organizations, that being like these gangs in like places like Russia or other Soviet bloc countries, North Korea, places in Vietnam. There's been all kinds of attacks, and even some smaller organizations, but a lot of it's very organized and aimed very directly at churches and those missions organizations. Now, the question becomes, what's the ramifications of getting hacked? Because everybody is attacking you nonstop. If you think that nobody's attacking you, that's just not true. Your church, your missions organization is being attacked constantly, nonstop, all the time. It's a bit like those zombie movies, right? I enjoy zombie movies. It's a guilty pleasure. But at night they lock up all their doors. They start hammering down the windows and stuff. And then they're just surrounded by all these zombies trying to claw their way in. It's a bit like that. Every single day in cyberspace, your church is being attacked like that. They're just throwing everything at it, trying to just get in. And it is a massive horde or swarm just constantly trying to get into your church. Eventually, somebody's probably going to get in. It's a matter of time. However, there are a lot of things you can do to minimize that risk. And you should try to minimize that risk, because if you're like most churches, there's a good chance that you have a lot of your members' information stored in like some sort of database or an Excel sheet or something. Hopefully you're using a church management system for that. A lot of churches are still using, like I said, the Excel sheet. We'll deal with that at some other point. But right now I want you to focus in on the danger that there is to a group of hackers getting access to that information. So not only can they steal that information and try to use it for impersonation or trying to ransom it back or things like that, there's also this very real tendency for people to have contacted pastors over email. And when they've contacted pastors over email, they may have talked about some very sensitive things, right, that could be very damaging to them out in public. Now, on the one hand, yeah, we should, as Christians, we should go out and confess our sins. We should probably, bring some of these things before the church body. However, that's not necessarily things that we should just let go absolutely wide, that could be damaging. And some of those things are stuff like, not uncommon that some member of your church might say, hey, I've got a pornography addiction and I need help. Or maybe they say, hey, pastor, I was abused as a kid and I really need help. Or, pastor, my wife and I are just having this marriage problem. She cheated on me. What do I do? I need help. These are things that really happen in real ministry. And these are incredibly damaging things if they were to get out. And so you need to have, policies to determine how long you even keep that information, because you shouldn't keep that forever. But also, you need to be using some kind of framework to protect the people in your church. Now, if this stuff were ever to go out and go wide, your church is going to be an embarrassment and a laughing stock, because people in the community are not going to trust your church. They're not going to want to go there. They're going to be thinking, oh yeah, that's the church that got hacked and all of their members and information and stuff was stolen. So what can you actually do right now, today, in terms of getting on top of the risk and decreasing that risk? And it's actually very simple. There are actual frameworks that exist, like CIS, that would be the Center for Internet Security. They put out a guide called the Controls, and the current controls are version 8. At least as of the time of this video, it's version 8. If you follow the recommendations within the controls document, you're probably going to reduce your risk by at least 90%. Just the password policies alone, implementing those, definitely going to be in the 90% range, that you would reduce the risk of someone stealing your church's data or information. And that's a huge amount. And so it's not complicated. It's not super, super difficult. You just have to start comparing where you are against that framework. Now, some of you are also going to be in states or regions that have actual laws that require you to, that require certain guidelines that you follow. Oftentimes, those will also align with CIS guidelines. And so your foundation will usually want to be that CIS. And then once you've implemented that, also implement those other guidelines, because you'll find that, the majority of them are already covered there in CIS. Similar with your insurance. So if you have insurance, especially any kind of cyber insurance, they're going to ask you a lot of questions about, your password policies, about your network equipment policies, things like that. And usually they align again with CIS version 8. So if you've gone through and completed implementation group 1, you're going to be sitting in a lot better position in terms of everything from protecting your church, protecting the members in it, your reputation, and also decreasing the way that your insurance company looks at you and assesses your risk. So they may even bring down your premiums. Let me show you how I like to jump in and work with it. So let me bring up my screen. Now you can download CIS version 8, the guidebook, as well as there's an Excel sheet. And I like to work in this Excel sheet because this Excel sheet, as you can see, it just goes along and lets you kind of check things off the list. Now what I've done here, and what I recommend that you do, is as you go through, color in the boxes when you've completed something. Now you're going to be focusing here on implementation group 1. However, like I said, if you are doing something that is beyond IG1, just go ahead and fill in the box as well. Now here's an example in 6 where we've done a lot of this stuff, but in this scenario, we'll just say that for MFA requirement for remote access, maybe there's an old school VPN that's only requires a password. That doesn't quite meet the guidelines here. And so I've marked it in red. It needs to be done. Similarly, let's say we've got a church management system like Planning Center or something that does not require any sort of MFA or single sign-on. Now, shame on them. They really should be requiring this at this point. And as a church, you may have to start to harp on your vendors and saying, hey, I need to be CIS IG1 compliant. Why are you guys not helping me get here by requiring this within your product or providing this within your product? All right, so that is my recommendation. Go out there and get your hands on the CIS controls, and start trying to fill out that IG1 requirements. If you have trouble with it, just take it one by one, step by step. Try and get through controls 1. Maybe you might want to actually start midway through and try and focus on implementation group like 5 and 6. A lot of that has to do with passwords and authentication, and that tends to be the low-hanging fruit. So just try and start going through, figuring out which areas are going to take you the least amount of time, check those off, and then move on to the next areas as well. All right, that's it for this week. I hope you guys have a great week coming up. And while you're here, like, subscribe, follow us, whatever it is on the platform that you're watching. And there should be some additional videos for you guys to kind of follow up with. I will see you guys next week.